All right, well, I woke up this morning to my Twitter feed and saw this story, this upcoming story from the New York Times. It talks about the best of late night. Sarah Silverman defines woke for Newsmax. The New York Times covering Newsmax. This is a big deal, not because Newsmax is in the New York Times, because this story is how I learned that The Daily Show is still on television. Apparently, Silverman is now the host of that once great show, and she was triggered this week by one of James Rosen's questions.
Anyway, a reporter from Newsmax was at the White House yesterday, and he asked a very Newsmaxy question.
One of the most prominent themes that we hear from both elected Republicans and candidates has to do with what is called wokeism. And so we hear so much talk about woke capitalism, a woke military, and so on. And by way of trying to clarify this for the American people, I wonder if we couldn't begin with a threshold question, to wit, is President Biden woke?
This guy really thinks, is Joe Biden woke, was like a hard-hitting question. The real hard-hitting question would be, is Joe Biden awake?
Well, she's not wrong about that. Sarah obviously, though, hasn't been paying much attention to what's going on at the White House these days because James Rosen is there most days, not just yesterday. And he did ask this week if President Biden is awake, kind of in a way. At least that's how I perceived it. Rosen, like a lot of people on the press corps, have real questions about the president's ability to show up and do his job every day and communicate effectively, especially considering all of the objects flying over our heads and the fighter jets that have also been flying over our heads this week.
Is it the view of the president's communications team that he is equally adept in all settings in terms of communications, or are there some that play to greater strengths, some where he probably isn't as strong, etc.?
I will tell you this, the president is the best communicator that we have in the White House.
Is President Biden woke?
So let me tell you what the president cares about and what's important to this president. The president doesn't concern himself about what Republicans are trying to do in creating political stunts.
All right, so you heard Karine Jean-Pierre just say that Joe Biden is the best communicator at the White House. So instead of focusing on that question or the sheer ridiculousness of the answer by the press secretary or the overall lack of transparency from the White House on several major stories, Silverman really just wanted to make sure we all know how woke she is.
Because, like, what I know woke to mean is, like, learning new things about people or the world and then acting accordingly, like basic kindness, maybe a gesture of care to people who are more vulnerable than you. You know what? Actually, you wouldn't like it. It's Jesus stuff. But,
Oh, they love to mock Jesus and his followers, don't they? And I don't know, what would Jesus say, Sarah, about mocking Caitlyn Jenner for standing up for girls who don't think it's fair that they have to compete against biological men in sports?
If you think a trans girl, you think a trans girl is too strong? What about tall girls as opposed to short girls? What about boys in high school who are teeny tiny and their teammates have already hit puberty and are shaving? Why don't you just have co-ed sports divided by weight or height? This is so dumb. They are legislating this without one single example of how this plays out.
Now, I think a lot of parents and girls are worried about anyone who would see pictures of women who are much bigger and stronger than these girls they're competing against in sports and think that it actually looks fair. Sarah, this is what Caitlyn Jenner and the rest of us are worried about as well. The Cherokee County, North Carolina School Board had to forfeit all of the girls' volleyball games against a rival school after a transgender athlete reportedly injured a player because the spike was too hard. People are getting hurt. Meanwhile, the Biden administration has been filled with people whom we are supposed to celebrate because they are firsts, regardless of how bad they fail. The reason James Rosen asked if the president is woke, because these super progressive woke policies and personnel seem to be embedded in everything this administration is working on, and most of it isn't working. The Urban Dictionary says the term woke was initially intended to describe when a person becomes more aware of social injustice. But thanks to people like Silverman, all this radical gender, race, and abortion stuff from activists like BLM, which has had a lot of financial problems and violence associated with their social justice protests, the term woke has taken on a new meaning. It's now become a pejorative. The Urban Dictionary says the woke folk think they are enlightened, even though they are extremely closed-minded and are unable to accept other people's criticisms or different perspectives. It sounds like someone we know, Sarah Silverman, perhaps. The lady doth protest too much, methinks. Joining us now is Dave Rubin, host of the Rubin Report and author of Don't Burn This Country. And Dave, I actually had to lift that Silverman clip about Caitlyn Jenner from your show, so thanks for that.
My pleasure, John, and allow me to lift something from the internet while you were doing your little intro there. Here's Sarah Silverman in blackface. I don't know if it's the glare, if you're going to see it fully, but yeah, that's on Google. You can find that. It's funny, her ex-boyfriend, Jimmy Kimmel, he's also been in blackface. So are these people just a little bit kinder and just trying to learn a little bit more about other people? And it's us that are all so mean. They said Newsmax is further right than Fox News because we care about freedom and individual rights and actual truth and not corporate-sponsored misinformation. It's just extraordinary. You want to look at the blackface picture again?
It is extraordinary.
Right, look at that thing. Look at that.
Actually, I've seen it too many
like
times already. I've seen
hardcore.
too many people like Jimmy Kimmel in blackface and Justin Trudeau. We could go down that road as well. But, you know, it's interesting that Newsmax is in the New York Times and the subject of Daily Show commentary because we're getting a lot of attention because of this AT&T stuff. And, you know, we have seen this kind of overwhelming support. People really seem to like free speech, Dave.
Yes, people like free speech. And, you know, there's a really incredible thing that happens with the remote control that most of us have next to our nightstand or, you know, next to the couch, which has a up or down channel on it. And if you don't like something that's on television, you can actually change the channel and watch other programming. But that is not what these woke activists want you to do. They want to silence anything that is counter to their narrative. The hilariousness, of course, of going after Newsmax is that what Newsmax is doing, as far as I can tell, is offering a much-needed voice of reason, or let's say, I would say, a center-right perspective. Virtually everything that is on mainstream corporate media, ABC, NBC, CBS, New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, the list goes on, is, I would say, center-left to extremely far left, basically socialist left. So they don't want the counter voices being heard, because if the counter voices are heard, then her propaganda, Sarah Silverman's propaganda, by the way, I'm not for cancel culture, but whoever dressed her for that show, The Daily Show, needs to be fired. Why'd they put her in a clown outfit on top of everything else?
You know, Bianca says she looked like a school teacher. Sometimes I don't feel confident enough criticizing people's fashion, but that's what Bianca's great for.
Mean school teacher.
Sorry. Bianca says
I was
she looked
channeling
like a mean school
Bianca
teacher.
there.
So there you go. Well, real quick before we go, Dave, your buddy Elon Musk, he was part of the World Government meeting that's happening, you know, someplace in some foreign location. It's amazing too. I want to take a listen to what he had to say.
I think we should be maybe a little bit concerned about actually becoming too much of a single world government. If I may say, that we want to avoid creating a civilizational risk by having, frankly, this may sound a little odd, too much cooperation between governments.
It only sounds odd to the people in that room. The other thing that I love about this is that Elon Musk proved that you don't need to fly your private plane to Saudi Arabia or Davos, for that matter, wherever this is. You can zoom in, and you can still have a pretty big impact.
I know, but then you don't get the foie gras and all the caviar and, you know, the A5 Japanese Wagyu and all that stuff that they serve for breakfast and lunch and dinner. Look, Elon, of course, is right. You know, all of these conferences, whether it's Davos, WEF, or this One World Government thing, or whatever they are, there's plenty of them that go on throughout the year. They all are designed for a top-down world government. They want to take the sovereignty of nations away. And Elon is right. Once you have one thing in charge of all of us, and you no longer respect the rights of nation states, which have nation states in the last 100 years especially, have freed more people than at any time in human history. Once you go ahead and do that, well, if there's a flaw in the system, in the giant Borg system, then it's going to take out everybody. And that's what he's warning against. It's been completely consistent with his message since he bought Twitter, and I'm glad to see it.
We've all been warned. Dave, great to see you. And I'm coming over for some of that Wagyu beef. I know you got some.
Anytime.
For lunch. Great to see you, Dave.